Hello and welcome to another episode of Not Without My Sister. So this is the second part of our careers series, if you can call 2 episodes a series. And the last one we talked about my job, career trajectory to get to where I am today. And today we're going to talk about Rosemary. And so I am going to ask some very insightful questions of my sister, designed to get to the bottom of what social media actually means. And we're going to discover that despite the fact that she has worked for some epic names such as the Irish Times and other things that I can't remember that she's going to mention, she nonetheless considers herself not yet to have achieved the full heights of her potential. And I would just like to say that that is because she is really a very big complainer. And with that, let's go.
Right to be jealous all
you
along.
You were that successful. So, Rosemary, on that note, you were that successful. It's just now that you don't have a job. You were, and you're highly educated, much more educated than I am, although I do read much more intelligent books than you now. Right? Isn't that true? Don't roll your eyes. Your eyes are literally going to pop out of your head at the end of this. So, you went to college for English.
So I had kind of a messy end to secondary school because I basically did transition year, which was optional in our school. Loved transition year. Hated going back to 5th and 6th year and the kind of formulaic box ticking of you have to do your leaving now. Hated going from transition year where our school, I think this was very, very bad of them, but they gave us a certain amount of freedom. We didn't have to ask to go to the bathroom anymore in transition year. We were just allowed to go. And then I suddenly went back in 5th year and hated having to ask to go to the loo, hated being told what to do. I remember one day one of the teachers stopped me in the hall and told me to pick up a tissue that was on the floor. And I went, "Oh, that's not mine." And she went, "I didn't ask you whose it was, I asked you to pick it up." And I was like, I'm not picking up someone else's dirty tissue. And she was like, "Pick it up." And I was like, "No." It was that kind of shit that I then just got into loads of trouble. And I remember
but that's actually gross, in fairness.
It was so gross.
Yeah,
I remember when I got my Leaving Cert results, our year head came up to me then and went, "Now, are you surprised?"
What?
As in surprised that you did so well. And I was like, "No, I always knew I was clever. I was just being a dickhead."
Oh, I thought you meant, are you surprised you did so badly?
No. He was going what was my biology teacher as well kept trying to get me to drop down to pass biology. She was like, "You're never going to pass honours.
You just must look really stupid."
No, it was just because I got really bold and I kept coming back late from lunch because I was off at my boyfriend's house snogging him. I was just a total brat in 6th year.
You had a much more exciting teendom than I did, I have to say. I literally was like, Nash asked me the other day, he was like, "Mom, how many times did you, mitch or whatever, what's it, bunk off school?" And Don's like, "Oh, so much. I barely went to school." I was like, never. I was like, I literally never, ever, ever did. Ever. I was so boringly good. Ever. You did multiple times. You smoked behind the shed in school.
Oh, yeah, no. Sorry, I totally smoked.
Yeah, you bunked off down the local fields.
I went drinking in the fields and got caught by the guards.
Oh,
I used to go down the village at lunchtime when I wasn't supposed to, sneak out of school, which was bad, actually.
I remember that. And do you remember one of Mom's friends saw you and then reported back to Mom, and then Mom said, what did Mom say to you?
No, it wasn't actually. It was I told you.
Oh, yeah.
And you reported back to Mom.
Yeah, it was me.
And then I thought it was Mom's. I was like, "Oh my God, it was Brona, wasn't it?" And Mom was
oh
like,
my
"It
God,
was Brona." And I was like,
dick.
"It was."
Oh my God. What
it didn't even occur to me that it was you. Fucking bitch. Anyway, so after I did my leaving, I was really all over the place. Didn't know what I wanted to do. So I applied for arts in Maynooth, only because if you got over 500 points and you got accepted to Maynooth, you got €1,000.
You're such a knob. I know.
So anyway,
oh my God.
But then when it came to it, I was like, "Oh, I don't really know if I want to do this." So I took a year out then while I was kind of figuring it out, and I worked in Urban Outfitters, and then I worked in Zara for 6 months.
Mom was determined that you were going to become the shop manager in Zara. She was determined.
but then she was also determined that I was going to become a civil servant to get a nice pensionable job because
She was actually obsessed with getting you into the civil service.
She was because I had applied. They do these applications like you can apply to go into the pool to be a clerical officer. So I had applied for this job like basically the minute my Leaving Cert exams were over, and then I finally got offered a job the following, I think, March or April. And I was working at Zara at the time, which I actually quite liked, and the pay was really good.
You were very good at it because you were also really, like, people are going to be surprised to hear this, very honest. Like, and it's so annoying, when you go in, and that's why you were good in Brown Thomas as well, because when you go in, you're like, oh, is this nice? I mean, they're like, oh my God, you look gorgeous. You're like, just go away if you're not going to give me decent feedback.
Yeah. Whereas I was always kind of going, that's nice. Why don't you try this one? And I'd bring them something else that basically I wanted to buy but couldn't afford. Yeah, because I worked in Brown Thomas, and I think, did I work in Brown Thomas? And then I worked in Urban Outfitters. I hated Brown Thomas. And then I worked in Zara, and then I got the job in the civil service, so I left Zara. Because, I don't really know why I left Zara, because I did like it. But then the bosses were kind of maniacs.
You hated the bosses. You hated the bosses. You have a problem with authority.
Higher managers.
Do you know what?
I do.
Do you actually know what I've just realised as you're talking?
What?
And this is going back to episode 1, and now I'm in a rage again. Mother is trying to craft a tiny Claire McCabe out of you. She worked in Brown Thomas and loved it, and talks all the time about how they took the Brown Thomas label and sewed. Oh no, it wasn't her.
Sewed them into their pennies
Somebody
clothes.
else sewed them into their pennies clothes. Well, I don't think penny exists, but they're regular clothes. And then she worked in the civil service.
She
Literally,
did. And
she has never. I swear to God, she saw me off at the airport to Milan and just went, "Bye, pet."
You know what? Despite the fact that I have the patience of I don't know, a very belligerent cat, she seems to always on at me about how I should have become a primary school teacher. Always oh, the holidays would be great.
You.
Yeah, but I'd be crap. I've no patience.
I think you'd be good. You're good with the kids.
Oh no. I don't understand after you tell them something once. I'm like, what are you not getting? I already told you that. I don't. Oh no, nope. Anyway.
I did actually say to my kids yesterday, though, I said to my poor 6-year-old, I said, which part of Pick That Up did you not understand? And I was like, oh my God, I'm turning into dad. I need to really watch it. It's so mean to talk to my poor 6-year-old like that. Now, he's really bold, I have to admit. So, only after I gave him a slap around the head did he cop on. No, that's a joke. That's a joke. As if.
Certain things you shouldn't joke about. Anyway.
I know, sorry.
So, I took this year out. I worked in the civil service. I fucking broke my arm, and then ended up having.
Oh my God! Was that when we went on the holiday with your broken arm? Yes. Do you have that picture?
Yes, I actually have a photograph of the two of us sunbathing, and I had no top on because I was fucking obsessed with going topless that summer in front of our dad and our uncle.
Maybe you were just trying to make sure that the amount of coverage that you normally would have, was already taken up by the cast on your arm.
Oh. And I'm basically covering my tits with my book, which I'm sure is some terrible. If I only zoomed in, I'm sure is some terrible, damning indictment of my intelligence levels. And then I have my cast hanging limply beside me. Anyway, so I broke my arm on the neighbour's driveway.
Sorry, that's not the story. So, in the sea.
We're going to get to that in a minute, but I just want to say how I'd broken my arm.
Okay, sorry.
I broke my arm. I broke my arm on the neighbour's driveway as I had been dispatched over to fetch a menu for the Indian takeaway that Mum was away, that Dad and I were going to call and have delivered to the house for our dinner.
Are you seeing a pattern here? Are you seeing a pattern here?
Dad's trying to kill me.
No. Didn't Mom break her arm getting your Indian takeaway recently?
She did.
Indian takeaway.
Listen, Beatrice, when you eat 5 Indian takeaways a week, one of them is bound to coincide with an accident.
Poor Mom. Mom doesn't eat 5 Indian takeaways a week.
No, but I do. Yeah, so I broke my arm.
I'm actually quite genuinely sure that Bombay Pantry, if they follow you on Twitter or whatever, when they heard you were leaving, probably were like, pack it up, lads, we're going out of business.
Well, honestly, they never offered me a single thing. So, probably because they're like, this one doesn't need any freebies, she can pay for it 4 times a week. Grand. So Mom and Dad were going to France for 2 weeks, and you were meeting them there from Paris, I think.
Oh yeah, that was great.
Right? And I wasn't meant to go because I had this job in the civil service and I didn't have enough holidays. But then I broke my arm and I couldn't drive the car and I couldn't get myself to work, and I also couldn't work because I had a broken arm. So then I had to go on the holiday. And then Mom was like, it's dishonest to go on holidays while you're off work on sick leave. So you should hand in your notice.
Mom's
right?
actually nuts.
Yeah, so anyway, I handed in my notice, went on the holiday to France, had very many lols at me with my cast.
Wasn't this the holiday where Mom threw the croissant tantrum? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
There was like the local boulangerie, and
Was
every
out of
single morning
croissants.
we'd go down and they were out of croissants. And then one morning Alan got on the local bike, got on the house bike. The local bike, that sounds really bad. He didn't get on the local bike. He got on the bike that was in the garage.
Jesus
And
Christ.
he cycled at the crack of dawn down to the boulangerie like it's Paris. I mean, it's France, you know. They're serious about their croissants and their bread. If you're not there first, they're gone.
Yeah.
So he cycled down and he came back, and like it must have been 7 a.m. You were actually still in bed, I remember, because you weren't part of this.
Oh,
And he arrived along and he laid out his, the fare on the table, and Mom came down delighted, and then she goes, "Where are the croissants?" And Alan goes, "Oh, they're right there. They only had chocolate croissants." "I hate chocolate croissants." And it was like, just have one. And I remember I took the croissant and I scraped out. And in France, they just have the sticks of chocolate. Like they weren't even, it's not like dotted with chocolate. So I peeled out the 2 sticks. And I just remember that was the moment, honestly, where the baton was passed. And I was like, Mom's a baby. I was like, this is not my mature, wise mother. I was like,
listen,
Mom's
I have to
immature
say,
too. That was the moment.
Mom is not the person you can scrape things off and then she'll eat the rest.
Oh, no,
do you know what I mean?
Like, yeah.
Like,
no, but like literally, if you had seen it, the chocolate came off perfectly. It was freezing cold.
Beatrice,
croissant was
I know.
perfect.
No.
And she threw such a fit.
You.
She sulked. She ate nothing. She wouldn't drink her tea. And she recovered at about 11 a.m. And she will deny this story, but we had about 9 witnesses. Like, everybody was horrified by this.
Except me.
Very out of character, childish behaviour from our mother. Very out of character. Relatively out of character.
Although very in character when it comes to croissants.
Yes, and food. Correct.
So anyway, sorry, this is literally going to be the longest, most boring story about
No, it's brilliant. No, it's brilliant. And then we went swimming, and our Uncle Niall...
I was hoping we were just going to get to skip over that.
And our Uncle Niall, who is very funny...
No, hang on. I would just like to point out, when you're in a plaster of Paris cast, you can't get it wet. And it was very hot. So when everybody was going for a swim in the sea, I wanted to go for a bit of a dip. So I had walked out to about my nipples in water, and I was holding my cast.
Did you have a top on in this picture?
I fucking probably didn't. So I was holding... No. We don't have a picture of me in the sea.
Oh my God, I wish we did.
Oh, listen, everybody can imagine. So I'm there up to my nips in water, cast diligently held aloft because the doctor had instructed me not to get it wet. When Niall shouts from the shore, "Go on."
I can't.
He had started that summer calling everyone gobbers, like short for gobshite, but I think he thought it was slightly more polite.
Hands up if you're a gobber.
Yeah, hands up if you're a gobber.
And Rosemary's out there with the hand up.
Yeah, everyone else's arms shot under the water, and I'm there like my cast up in the air. In an absolute fucking rage.
Oh, it's so funny.
Oh my God. That was also the summer that he just called me Chunky the whole time. Oh, there's Chunky.
I forgot about that.
I love how you're laughing.
It was so mean. It was so mean.
Sometimes he still calls me Chunky, I think. I'm like, I'm 35. Have some respect.
Oh, my one stomach muscle's really hurting. Oh, wait, I don't think it's a muscle. Oh, Chunky.
Absolute weapon.
I think it's time for a break.
So anyway, after that summer of great humiliation, I went to college and I decided to go to Galway, and I studied English and Italian because my sister was in Italy. I was like, it'll be really handy if I learn to speak Italian. But of course, you're only fucking there for another 2 months or something, and then you moved to Paris. I could have done English and French.
Oh, but you're good at the Italian. And you came and you stayed for a full summer and you used your Italian.
I did.
So I must have been there for longer than that. Yeah.
Yeah. No. I mean, I think you were there until about 3rd year of college. So as part of my course in NUI Galway, we were meant to do Erasmus, which I didn't do because I basically had a boyfriend and was like, I don't want to go to Italy for a whole year.
Oh, I remember that you're a serial boyfriender. That'll be another.
I
That's
know.
another. That's another podcast where we talk about Rosemary's inability to be by herself ever.
There's nothing wrong with that, Beatrice. Some people are just better in couples than other people.
100%.
My therapist
but
told me that.
We'll just talk about it. We'll talk about it. We'll analyse
But I feel like
it.
it's okay. Listen, this episode is never going to be over. I did my degree in English and Italian. Oh, because I really wanted to be a journalist. And Mom was really good friends with Marion Finucane. And I remember asking Marion at the time what her advice would be. Like, should I just study journalism? Should I study, broadcast journalism? Should I do creative writing? What should I do? And she said that if you're going to do journalism, do not do straight journalism as a degree, because there's no point in being a journalist if you have nothing to write about.
That's an interesting
like,
perspective.
Yeah, so she was like, do something else first so that you have education in something other than just journalism. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's interesting.
So, yeah. And I mean, when I went to NUI Galway, I initially studied English, Soc and Pol, which was sociology and politics, psychology and Italian, kind of thinking that either psychology or sociology and politics would end up being the one that I would pair with English, thinking like they'd be good for journalism. And then I hated them.
Oh, did
So
you?
I
I
was
was going to
doing-
say, did you hate psychology?
Oh my God, Beatrice, psychology is very dull. I thought psychology was going to be very exciting, and I'd come out of every class going, that's why I'm like this, because I'm a narcissist. I thought every class would be about me. But like literally you'd do a class and they'd be like, this is the amygdala. And I'd be like, oh my God, I hated biology.
The
It was
amygdala.
so-
I have watched enough Criminal Minds to know that it's the amygdala.
I clearly have not watched any. And I didn't pay attention to psychology. And I've heard loads of people say, Jesus, like it's really hard to fail psychology. I got 41%. I was 2% off failing
love you.
in first year. Disaster. I think I actually had to repeat part of it because I failed part. Anyway, it was terrible. So after I finished my degree, I then did an MA in... I applied for the MA in journalism in DCU and in DIT. And I didn't get accepted to DCU the first time. And I had absolute, as Mum would say, absolute bunny on bum bum. I was in a rage about that. So I was like, how dare they? I'm brilliant. And I got accepted to DIT. And then on the second round, I got accepted to DCU. But at that point, I was so thick with them for not accepting me the first time. I was like, I'm not going there.
Dead right, their loss.
I know. I was like, absolutely not. I won't be anybody's second choice. So I went to my second choice, DIT. And they had started a new course in international journalism or something. So when I got accepted to to the regular journalism course, they were like, I don't suppose you'd consider doing the international, and like they did a really good sales pitch on it. Like, it's going to be a much smaller class, and we're, including peace and war reporting and conflict journalism and
Is that
blah,
when
blah,
you
blah.
decided you were going to Syria? Because Dad was in bits, and I was like, she's
Yeah.
not going anywhere. Like literally, she
I thi-
hates going into town. She's not going to Syria. And I remember I called him up. I had to really talk to him. He was like, what am I going to say to her? I need to call her up. I need to tell her this isn't a good idea. I was like, Dad, seriously, have you
think
met
it was
Rosemary?
actually-
She loves
look-
being at home. And he goes,
Oh my God, I do
you've
love
made
being
me
at home,
feel
and I'm so
much better."
lazy as well. I
Yeah,
always
he was
come to these big
literally,
plans,
I
and I'm like, I
pointed
don't want
out
to do
these
that now.
realities, and he felt so much better. Like
I think
he was freaked.
The only correction I would like to make is that I think it was Iran and not Syria, because I just read The Bookseller of Kabul, and Syria wasn't really like on my wavelength at that point.
Oh, you could be right.
It was
yeah.
Iran.
Sorry, I got.
I mean,
yeah.
it's just
Okay.
important to correct these things.
So, what was the difference between journalism and international journalism? Then was there a
Well,
difference?
the international journalism doesn't exist, and course doesn't exist anymore. I think it was their way of adding another course so that they could take on more students.
Okay.
The international journalism course, like the point of it was to prepare you for being a foreign correspondent, maybe, or working in a war zone, or just going to a conflict zone, I guess. But
Can I ask you a question, Rosemary? How many years ago was this now?
13.
So, do you think,
think
that? Do you
12.
think that journalism has changed significantly? Like, would you still do journalism? Because the internet existed, right? But was like Huffington Post, was journalism so online? Like, was there all this conversation around, the death of the newspaper, the death of the broadsheet,
No.
etc.? Had that
And,
happened yet?
No, and we didn't have any modules that focused on online journalism. because it wasn't at that point yet. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it was all talking about newspaper journalism. And I actually think, like, I think it's really difficult to prepare someone to be a journalist. And by that same token, I think it's impossible to, like, the idea of doing a course to show someone how to be a journalist in a conflict zone is very bizarre to me, because I'm like, there's no way you could prepare someone. Like, that's someone who has worked in news reporting and then works in maybe like a bureau in Paris and then goes to like, you cannot prepare someone out of college
But
to
I
go,
think-
I'm going to go to a conflict zone.
But I think that's a really interesting point, because I think even if I think about fashion, right, which is like nothing to do with the conflict zone except for just regular day-to-day conflicts, I think that like college, certainly the course that I did, and I'm sure it's different nowadays, but did nothing to prepare me for the world of working.
Yeah.
Did not explain to me in any way, hey, when you work in fashion as a designer, these are the teams that surround you. This is how the business will be structured. Like, there was no business aspect at all. And like, honestly, I often think that if I had known how companies were structured, I likely, even though I love design, would not have done design. I would have done merchandising, because
Yeah.
being a merchant, you work your way up to a senior enough level. You can, in many companies, not all companies and not as much in Europe, but in America certainly, as it's business focused and business is the primary stakeholder, you can run design. Whereas it's very rare for design to run, for it to work the other way, that, you know, that you're creative. Oh, here, let's let you run the business. Now that does happen in Europe. But like, I didn't even know merchandising existed. Now I'm like, was that me just being super like uninformed? But there was no conversation about that ever. So like, I think to your point, it's not necessary. It's teaching you something, but it's not necessarily preparing you for the actual world. Or the application of it.
Yeah, like there was very little logistics in terms of, like, the majority of working journalists, even just in Ireland now, are freelance, right? So are working as journalists from the comfort, more or less, of, well, I mean, we're all at home now, but like, are working from home, are pitching to different publications, are writing maybe a feature for this magazine and then a news piece for this paper, and then are doing a property piece for this supplement. Like, you have to kind of be a jack of all trades. And there was nothing in my course about like pitching to a newspaper, about like how to format a pitch, how to make contacts, how to reach out to somebody. Like, I kind of would have thought that I almost would have emailed the editor of the Irish Times to go, I have an idea for a piece. Like, they didn't teach us that there are actually all these different editors, and like, this is the person who'll be responsible for this, and here's how you go about this. And like, that's one of the things that I always say to people now, like, the most important thing to learn is how to do a pitch. But if the question you were originally asking was, would I do journalism again?
Yeah.
If I was to go back, I don't think I would. I think after I had done my BA, if I could go back now, I would do something like an MA in gender studies, or I would do something that I'm really interested in and go, I would love to be like better read on this topic. I would love to be better informed on this topic, and I would love to be able to write more informedly about this thing.
So what you're saying
that I'm passionate about.
So when it's interesting to me when you say that they're like, you know, you'd write a piece about property or a piece about, and I'm thinking to myself, these are probably not all topics, exactly to your point, that somebody is necessarily passionate about. It sounds very much like, this is me earning a living. Is that how you, because I imagine people think they're getting into journalism to write about the topics that they're passionate about. You know, not necessarily to execute to a list of topics that need to be covered for the paper tomorrow, you know? Do you think that you saw it differently? Do you think that it is different to how you imagined it would be?
Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, I think I just thought that the very rare jobs were not rare. So I thought that I might get a job writing a column, or working in features, or writing opinion. But I never realized that if you write a column, you might get paid €150 a week for this one column that you do every week. And like, Carrie Bradshaw has a lot to answer for in that sense. But yeah, like, I kind of thought that I would be able to do what I loved doing, which was writing about things I'm interested in. Do you know what I mean? And like, now that I think about it, I'm like, that's very lofty. You know, the idea that I would be making a living out of that, but that is what I thought.
But part of the problem is that, not part of the problem, but part of the irony of that is that you did do that for the first couple of years, right? You did get to write about the things that you were interested in.
Yeah, like ish. So like for the first, while I was doing my master's, I got a job in the Irish Times through our cousin's friend worked there, and I said to her, "The Irish Times is looking for sub editors. Do you know anyone?" And she said, "Yeah, my cousin is doing the MA in journalism DIT at the moment. I'll get her to get in touch." So like again, it was like somebody who knew somebody got me kind of in the door, and I went in for a trial day, and I did a trial day as a sub editor, and then I got kept on. So I did 2 days a week while I was doing my MA and while I was writing my thesis. And then after that, I went up to kind of 2 or 3 or 4. And I was always a casual sub-editor. But like the very first piece that I wrote for the Irish Times was a piece for a commercial supplement about something to do with the EU. And the piece that I wrote was about how something about EU rules about fruit and about how certain bendy bananas didn't pass EU, like bananas had to be at a certain bend. It was something about bananas. Swear to God. Swear to God. I was just...
So when, Rosemary, and this is not to do necessarily with your career as much, but it is, it's like it's all tied together, I think. When did you start feeling, when were you diagnosed with depression, if you don't, like, if that's okay to ask as part of this conversation?
Oh, yeah,
I feel like that
yeah.
impacted everything in your life.
So I had started going to see a therapist when I was doing my BA in Galway. I had gone to see a therapist then because I was like, I've been feeling really low and I've been feeling really sad for an extended period of time. And I went to see a therapist and I just thought she was crap. She kept telling me, I don't know if we've talked about this in the podcast before, but she kept telling me to imagine my feelings as like a big ball and imagine handing that ball to someone else. And I was like, why? Like, there's something that felt really malicious about it, that I was like, why do I want to give it to someone else? I just don't want anyone to have it. You know what I mean? That I was like, why am I giving my feelings to this person?
Why couldn't she just tell you to throw it into the sea, like?
Why was it a ball to begin with? She even drew it on a whiteboard. A big circle. I was like, I know what a ball is. You don't need to draw it. Like, she's like, imagine your feelings in a circle. I'm like, are you really going to draw that right now? And then I went to another therapist when I was in DIT, but it wasn't until it was while I was at the Irish Times that I kind of started to go to regular therapy. I started to see and talk to my GP about it more regularly. And she kind of diagnosed me with a generalised depressive disorder, I think. And then that was when I started going on medication, was while I was at the Irish Times. And I was there for about 5 years, I think. So I think it was about 2 years after I finished my MA.
And why did you leave the Irish Times?
It was around that time. So I was at the Irish Times. I was working as a casual sub. So I was still doing 2 or 3 days a week. And I'd started doing more and more writing. So I was writing features and I was writing opinion. And I had started doing a weekly fashion column. That I got because I'd started doing the fashion blog for irishtimes.com. And then I got asked to do some fashion pages in the paper, in the weekly. I think it was every Wednesday, every Thursday. And then I did that for a couple of months. And while I was doing that, I started getting asked to go on more radio and to go on TV3 and to do more styling stuff. And I basically couldn't balance everything. And I was like, the thing that I'm enjoying the least really was the subbing, was the kind of office, the kind of production work in the Times. And I also felt like while I was there, I was seeing loads of people who had been there for 15 or 20 or 25 years and they were career subs.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't really want to do that. You know what I mean? So I kind of felt like either I needed to concentrate on one or the other. So I stopped doing the subbing. And that was kind of the beginning of the end of the Irish Times for me, because once I wasn't in the office every day, I kind of just got more and more detached, if that makes sense. Like, I started doing more and more TV, I started doing more radio, and then I think I'd stopped subbing maybe about 6 months when my column got dropped. The fashion page that I was doing once a week, which at the time I think I got paid 250 quid a week for it. So it was €1,000 a month, a little bit more. And it basically covered my rent and made sure that everything else that I did was, obviously like living expenses, but was kind of a plus, if you know what I mean. And when that got dropped, I was kind of like, oh my God, fuck. Because there were definitely some weeks where like I wouldn't be getting a lot of other jobs. And like that would be kind of what I was depending on. Like that's guaranteed and I can always pay my rent because I always have that. So then that stopped. And then I was freelance and I was kind of doing, like I was just like styling shoots for the odd shoot for magazines. I was styling stuff for TV3 for Expose. I was doing the odd kind of midday, which was the kind of panel chat show. And then my friend Kirsty was editor at Stellar at the time. And she asked me if I would have any interest in interviewing for the deputy editor position there. And so that's when I went into Stellar, when I kind of went, you know what, freelancing is really hard. And I think at the time I was kind of struggling with my mental health, but I was also struggling with my finances, like story of my life, because I absolutely love to spend money and well, I just love to spend money.
Yeah, but freelancing is really
and-
hard, right? Because like it is really
Yeah,
hard to not
yeah.
to because I mean I think, you know, I always have thought about the idea of going out and having a consultancy or doing something like that, but the idea of always having to go, like, it's not just, it'd be great if you just got to do your job, but so much of your job
Yeah.
is the hustle of like, what's
Oh my
the
God.
next job, you know,
Like,
and pay me for
so
the last
much,
job.
Yes, so much of it is admin, is chasing up invoices, is sending invoices, and then is also pitching. And when you're freelance, like, you know, everyone kind of says it very glibly, like, oh, you just have to get used to rejection. And you do, but like, imagine if you went for 5 job interviews every single week and say 2 of them you got and 3 of them you didn't. Like, it kind of grinds you down after a while. Do you know what I mean? You have all these kind of disappointments, or even not just disappointments, but you just have loads of people not emailing you back.
Yeah, well, I
And
think
it would
also
get really disheartening.
I think also you're not pitching, like, especially if you're freelancing, like writing, you're not pitching for a big 6-month pitch, you know? So if you were
Oh,
doing
no,
kind of,
no.
you're, everything is like, I'm just pitching for a $200, $300, $500, well, euro job, you know?
No,
And
no, you're pitching for like €70 to independent.ie, like
Yeah.
€120 for a small
so-
feature, up
and
to
then
maybe
you think
150.
about the time that you spend doing that, like by the time you
Yeah.
pitch it and get it and negotiate it and then chase it and then actually write it, like how much are you even getting an hour, you know? Like
Yeah.
it's one thing if you were saying I'm pitching for a long-term project, because like if I was pitching a consultancy, I'd be pitching for a 1 month, a 3 month, a 5 month,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And but
Yeah.
even that, like that's hard because companies don't want to, it's hard to get companies, they have like, they'll reach out looking for somebody, like in fashion certainly, looking for somebody that they want to do a certain project. But the idea of having your own consultancy where you're pitching them and hoping that they'll find the
Where
money
you're selling it to
for
them.
an
like,
idea
yeah.
that they didn't even have, and that they're not
Yeah,
even
yeah.
sure they want, like it feels unnerving
It would
to
be
me.
hard. Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
think a lot of people who work freelance in the fashion industry, they're considered freelance and they call themselves freelancers. Basically means like
But
they
they
don't
have
benefits.
clients.
No, well, it's more that they actually could work in house with somebody for 3 days a week, but they're still freelance. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
a lot of
yeah.
people-
But like,
yes, they
but
have like 1 or 2
what I mean is,
clients.
yeah,
ongoing.
that they have regulars.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I was finding freelance difficult, like for a whole load of different reasons, and then like not knowing where your money's coming from. And I thought I had always wanted to work in magazines. And actually, you know what? At the exact same time that I got offered the Stellar job, I had pitched to Dunn Stores to come in and take over their social media.
Oh yeah, I
'Cause at the
remember
time,
that.
I was like, yeah,
And I mean,
I
I don't
had
want to. I
pitched-
don't want to derail the conversation even further. But I also remembered another one that Mom really wanted you to go. She really wanted you to do the buying course with pennies, and she
Well, you
kept
know-
trying to tell you to go back to do that. Every single time you
Yeah.
say, "I don't know about my job or my career," Mom goes, "You know that Pennies has an amazing buying training program."
Well, you know, actually, at the exact same time, I went for the trainee buyers thing in Pennies that
Oh.
exact same time, and didn't get it.
oh, that's
I know.
embarrassing.
And I went in, but like I just wasn't. I went in for what I thought was like an interview, and they were like, prepare a. It wasn't really a presentation, but they were like, you know, prepare, you know, like a small project. And like I went in with very basic, and like some girls had made like decoupage of their project. Do you know what I mean? That I was like, what? And they had just come out of like a 2-year buying diploma.
Yeah.
Whereas I was just like, I just have I have really good ideas. And I love clothes, but like I'd also been this fashion journalist, and I'd, you know, had this online presence, and I think they just were a bit like, your one's a loose cannon. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Do you know what? You would have hated it. This
They
would have
were
been
right.
like.
Yeah.
This would have been back to like pick up that tissue. You pick up the tissue.
Oh yeah. And there was actually a girl that I kept in touch with afterwards who did it, and I think stayed for about 3 months, and was like, it was awful.
Well,
Was
I
just
mean-
like absolutely hated it.
But I mean,
So
probably for her own reasons.
yeah, but I think she just said it was a lot of Excel, but,
Oh,
which
yeah,
I hadn't
okay.
which I hadn't anticipated.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it's maths, right? It's you
Yeah.
know, it's all about
It's
like
numbers,
what's
numbers, yeah.
inventory levels, etc.
Yeah. So I had pitched for this social media job at Dunn's, and they offered that to me at the exact same time that I got offered the Stellar job. And I think I was like, you know what, I've always wanted to work in magazines, so I'm going to give journalism one last go and work in Stellar.
And I will
So
tell you, you had very colourful stories from that time of your life.
I did. I worked with some very interesting characters, some of whom I cannot wait until they die so I can talk about all of the things that they said to me. That is all I'll say.
But you
about
also
that.
loved working with your friend. That was nice.
Oh my God, I loved working with Kirsty. I loved working with Linda, who was the fashion editor at the time. I loved working with Katie, who was and still is the designer on set. Like, it was so nice. And
Yeah.
you know what? To what you said earlier, it was really nice because it was such a female focused and female run environment. It was so nice to be surrounded by so many women and to just like have these people to bounce ideas off, which was something that I had obviously really missed because I think I'd been freelancing, like fully freelance, for about 2 years at that point. And
that
I
goes
really
back
missed.
to, I'm sorry, but that goes back to the collaboration and teamwork that you made fun of me for with my presenter's voice. It's true. Collaboration and
true.
teamwork
It is
can't
true.
create ideas in a vacuum. Like, I mean, it's that idea of like throwing out all the stupid ideas. Like, I'm not saying this is a good idea, but what if, and somebody else builds on it?
Yeah.
Like, you get to the good idea through
Yeah,
everybody,
eventually.
just throwing out the stupid ideas.
Yeah. So I stayed there. I think I was there for about 1.5 years. And
Is that all?
I mean,
I thought you were there for much longer.
no,
Oh,
No.
so many stories. People should be
I know.
quaking in their boots, in their tiny trousers, just saying.
in their tight jeans. Yeah, I was there. Yeah, it was only 1.5 years. And I left basically because the culture there, the culture from the top down, I found really challenging and unpleasant. And you know what? At a certain point as well, I just really realised that I am the kind of person who resents making money for someone else. That I really
I'd say
would,
many
like,
people probably identify with that, but it's
Yeah.
not everybody has
It
the
was-
luxury of acting
Yeah,
on it.
oh, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
But I mean, it's good if
Like-
you can, right?
Yeah. So basically, it was at the point when journalism was kind of shifting from, regular, like, we're writing the story and this is about the public interest and like the kind of good, meaty stories. And it was like, we need to get commercial partners to work with us on this story because people were buying less and less advertising and also people were buying less and less magazines. So it was like, how do we work with like different brands to bring a story to life? So like I would try and pitch things like, I want to interview these 6 musicians, these 6 female musicians about the industry in Ireland and we'll dress them in your clothes. And so it'll be a branded partnership, but it will just be the clothes and the rest of the story will be the story.
I think
But
that's
those-
interesting. Isn't that, you told me the other day about what's Kirsty's job now?
Yeah, Kirsty's now working in, and I don't want to speak for Kirsty because I'm not 100% sure, but she's now working in content or in the content studio in the Irish Times. So like similarly, it's those kind of like advertorial has now moved from like, this is an advertising feature about pennies to
Yeah.
this is a feature you actually want to read and it just happens to be sponsored by pennies and everyone's wearing pennies clothes. You know what I mean?
I thought that was really interesting. That's what I was going to say. Did
Yeah.
that job even exist 10 years ago? Like, there's so many different
No.
jobs within journalism
Yeah.
that, like, I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
think you'd know about.
Within media and like
Yeah.
this kind of crossover between journalism
Yeah.
and sales.
And
that
kind
has
of so,
happened.
but it's almost social. Like, everybody's really
Yeah.
focused now on storytelling. Like
Yeah.
nobody wants to be sold to. Like, we see it everywhere. Everybody, it's all very wrapped up in this idea of storytelling and branding. It's not
Yeah.
anymore like, hey, here's this thing. Do you want to buy it? It's like, it's
No.
not enough anymore.
Yeah, people want the story, but we were starting to do those kind of salesy things with contacts that you'd have in PR, contacts that you'd have in brands, and I just started getting really pissed off. I was like, why have I just signed this like 15 grand, deal or collaboration when I'm getting paid like 34 grand or something? Like, I'm not getting anything from this, and I wouldn't even get a thank you. Do you know what I mean? So I was getting really pissed off. So
Did it never occur to you to go and be like, hey, can any of my salary be based on like a percentage of this? Did you have that conversation? You're making a face that suggests that was not a possibility.
I would like to invoke my Fifth Amendment right to not incriminate myself and move on from that question.
Okay.
It is your Fifth Amendment.
Yeah,
Isn't it? Or is that
well,
guns?
what's the spousal one? No, your Fifth Amendment is the First Amendment is the right to bear. No, the Second
No.
Amendment. Do you know what? Shh. We'll post the amendments. As Fox would say.
Those will be in the show notes. Anyway, and at that same time, right, I had started a Snapchat account. I had started to get kind of popular by Irish Town. I think I had
That
like
thing where you just walked around, as Mom would say, you walked around Stony
chatting
Batter.
into my phone.
Yeah. And I'd be like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
I'm like, she doesn't
People
have time
loved
to
it.
have a phone call with me, but like she's walking up
I was
and down
busy.
streets. And
Listen,
you always
I
started
was busy.
you always start every sentence with
Oh, stop annoying me. I was busy making a name for myself. And
Yeah.
you know what? I used to get people messaging me going, oh my God, like, I can't believe you're going into fresh, like, again. This is so boring. And I'd be like, what? Like, you're literally, it'd be like having a stalker who's like, oh, could we not go here for lunch again? You know what I mean? You're like, just, like, I'm just doing, like.
I think what they were trying to tell you, Rosemary, is you were not engaging them.
I was not entertaining them in the way that they expected.
Yeah, for free.
They could just go follow someone else for free. So anyway, I started to get popular on Snapchat.
This free content is boring, isn't that it? This free content is boring me.
This free content is not what I'm paying for. Like, exactly. So I started getting offered brand collaborate. I think the first one I got offered was maybe from, I think it was Lidl. I can't remember.
You got some great stuff shipped to your door, I have to say.
Oh yeah.
Did you not get?
Listen,
did you get a load of condoms, or did I just make that up?
I got condoms. I got condoms in a box. When you opened it up, it made like sex noises. I think it went like, ooh.
Oh my God, this is literally mom's nightmare.
Very entertaining.
Mom's like the opposite of an influencer. Mom's like, and I couldn't even know, she'd be so horrified.
What's the opposite of an influencer? A dampener?
That's appropriate.
I also got an entire box of vibrators once.
Oh yes, that's the one you took pictures and told Mom, right?
This company was like, we'd like to send you a vibrator, right? And I was like, great, love a vibrator. And then they sent me 12 of them, and I was like, I think you're misunderstanding my anatomy. But it was basically an accident. And then they made me ship them back. It was really annoying. Yeah, I was like, could you just give them to my mates? So yeah, and then I became an influencer.
What else did you get to your door? You did get some other good stuff.
Yeah, funny stuff. I used to get loads of makeup. I did a collaboration with a prune company once for like $3,000. It was amazing.
Oh, I remember that. Oh, I know. Yeah, you cooked every prune recipe under the sun. But I remember you got a lot of makeup because I remember for Christmas you pretended to me that you'd bought it. And then afterwards you were like,
I did not pretend.
Yeah, you did.
Listen,
you absolutely
you used
did.
To pretend to me that you bought me things that you got from the shop near the office.
I absolutely never pretended. That was Dad. And it wasn't until I was 20 something that I realised the shop near the office was like an aphorism.
We will talk about Dad's shop in Dad's episode.
Right.
We really need to like get on with our lives now.
Okay.
So I became an influencer. Basically that I started taking money from brands and I was like, I can give up my job. This is great. Like happy days. So like take 500 quid and talk about something on Instagram. But it was actually shit.
Why?
Because the money never felt like enough for the shit that you got from people for it. If you know what I mean.
Oh, what do you mean? Like, your language is deteriorating here and Mother will have a problem with this.
I'm tired.
Yes, I know. Go on.
Well, basically, you would do a job, so I would sign up to do a job for a brand that might be like 500 quid, right? And you'd go, okay, I'm going to post a story to my grid. I'm going to do a blog post and I'm going to do 3 Instagram stories. And I think a lot of my problem with it was also tied up with my mental health because at the time I was very up and down. I didn't really know what things were going to be like tomorrow or what I was going to be able for tomorrow, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So I would have said to a brand, okay, on Tuesday I'm going to do these 6 Instagram stories. And then I wake up on Tuesday and be like, oh my God, I want to die. Like I don't want to do anything. I don't want to leave the house. But I would have to go like get on my bike and go around and be like, hi guys, here I am doing X, Y, Z. But I also
feel like, isn't it true? I mean, I do think this is, I mean, the market has moved there. Like the industry has moved to this place where like these sponsored, ads, etc. Nobody really likes them anymore. Like things, it was a trend of like, oh, it's really authentic. But that's kind of why the micro influencer is happening. And also like nobody wants them. Like the minute you see sponsored or, ad or whatever, everybody just kind of goes, oh, yeah. Like, because there's so many people talking about it now and it just doesn't feel authentic, especially if you're talking about millions of different things,
Yeah. I mean, I actually think the only thing that works now, and this is something that I did try to pitch when I was doing it, but very few brands wanted to do it because it's kind of a big investment. I think the only thing that works is if you sign on for a year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And also in a way, and this is like the pipe dream, but if the influencer approaches the brand and goes like, I love like Diet Coke, for example. Do you know what I mean? That you're like, no, or like, I'm always wearing H&M
Spanx.
Or, yeah. And like you approach the brand and go, look, I love your brand. I wear it all the time. I would love to become an ambassador. And, in exchange, I will post to my grid each month in which I tag you and I mention that I'm wearing you and like I mention that it's an ad. But otherwise, I'll just carry on my everyday life using your product. But I will be there to be like a spokesperson. I think that's the only thing that works. It's the only thing that feels authentic.
But it's hard then as well because like, I think every company has their own strategy too. So you could
Yeah.
say, I'll do this. And they're like, okay, but we'll reevaluate in 2 months. And if you're not garnering enough, like, if it's not effective enough for us, like, because you can have people, as you have shared with me and as I've since learned, like, you can have influencers who have loads of followers, but who don't have a very engaged base. But you can have so, they're talking about H&M all day, but it doesn't incentivize their listeners
It doesn't
to actually
translate.
purchase.
Yeah.
So,
and then also, like, from the influencer point of view, if that's going to work, it needs to be that you're only doing that with a maximum of 3 brands across 3 very different, lines, or like very different areas. So then they all need to be really lucrative.
yeah.
And so very few brands are like want to sign up, or like are willing to sign up for a year at a price that would make sure that you would never talk about a competitor. You know what I mean? And that, with somebody it feels natural, it's hard.
Here's what I wondered the other day, though. I was actually wondering, what is the, because you and I were talking about my career. Sorry. You were listening and I was talking about my career. And I was saying, I don't know a lot of like older designers. People tend to, like, you see a lot of older merchants. Like, you see a lot of people who are responsible for the P&L, for like the money side of the business. You don't see a lot of
What's P&L?
Profit and loss. So like the financial side of the business. You don't see a lot of designers. They end up at the helm in design houses in their 50s and their 60s. Because what's cool, what's like, who have their fingers on the pulse, etc., are the younger generations. And I mean, and that's normal, right? I mean, it depends on the company. Like, I don't want to, I don't want to overgeneralize, but in general, I don't want to generalize, but in general, like, when you get to that like older era, you're consulting, or have your own line, to your point. Yeah. And I wondered the other day, I suddenly had this thought about influencers. I was like, what if you build your entire career as an influencer, right? And you're not necessarily like a mega influencer. You're not and I'm not talking about you, but I'm saying like people who truly only have their income coming from brands, coming from the advertorial that they're doing for brands. What happens when you're suddenly older? Like, is there that same, like, is this a career path, or does it branch into something else?
Yeah, well, see, we don't really know, because obviously it hasn't been going on long enough. Like, you do see a lot of women in their 40s and maybe in their very early 50s who are doing brand collaborations, because I think what also happens is people trust women who are a little bit older, a little bit more now than they do women in their 20s. And maybe it's like a chicken egg thing as well, that I think when you're in your 20s and somebody offers you 250 quid to do an Instagram post, you're like, oh my God, great, yes. Whereas I think then when you're a bit older, and maybe you have had more of a career behind you, you might be more inclined to go, you know what, I'm not sure about that, let me think about it. I think this might be a better fit for me. You know what I mean? You might be a little bit more discerning, so you end up being more trusted because you have that experience. And you know what as well? Loads of these girls in their 20s, and I feel really sorry for them. It's like they've come straight out of school, they've got really popular on Instagram, or they've come straight out of college, right? They're really popular on Instagram. They suddenly become this influencer, but they have never had like a serious full-time job or a serious career. And then all of a sudden they're like kind of beholden to these followers who expect them to understand journalistic ethics and expect them to understand, like the morals of taking money for something, and expect them, like, I remember when there's this one girl that I follow who like was a really big influencer in Ireland. I think had become an influencer, like left school, maybe worked on a makeup counter for a while, then became an influencer. And she had a baby, and she was talking one day about formula feeding. And in Ireland, it's against the law to promote formula because our breastfeeding rates are so low, right?
Oh, I didn't know.
But she obviously didn't fucking know this, right? And there was this like uproar, and people went mad, you know what I mean, at her for doing this. But like, she hadn't been paid by the formula brand. She was literally just talking about her own experience, but she didn't know that you're actually not supposed to do this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I felt really sorry for her, because I was like, your followers like you because you're just this normal girl next door who's like authentic and, doesn't have any airs and graces. But then on the other hand, they're expecting you to have this wealth of knowledge and experience that you clearly don't have. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry, to like answer your question, we obviously don't know. I do think that brands like, you see in Europe, brands like Marks and Spencer are very good at working with older influencers. And I think it probably works very well for them.
That's a good point.
And I think as the audience on Instagram gets older, so like there are definitely more women in their 30s and 40s and even 50s now than there were even 2 years ago. as the audience gets older, there might be more of an appetite for an older influencer.
Oh, that's a good point.
But I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of them end up starting their own brands or like
I
writing
think that's
books.
it. I think when you
or-
said as well, having a collaboration, like it becomes more product based. It becomes like there's a revenue stream that isn't just, you know, reliant on you literally every day doing your own version of QVC. So, Rosemary, moving on. So you're now at Stellar. When you left, was it in a blaze of glory? Or did you throw a massive fit and leave? Or did you just hand in your resignation and leave?
And you know what? I actually really wish I had. In hindsight. Because like I handed in my notice. There was a very civilized conversation had. There was a like, is there anything we could do to entice you to stay? It was very nice. And I was like, no, like, you know, it's not even about the money. I think I was freelance for too long and I really miss that independence, blah, blah. Like, instead of going, let me list the reasons that I'm not staying. Like, let me list them. I was like, no, I really think, handed my notice, left the office, worked my 4 weeks notice, was never spoken to again.
What do you
by
mean?
My boss.
Never spoken to, like, during those 4 weeks?
In those 4 weeks, was never addressed, was never spoken to, was never hello, was never goodbye. There was not a single word spoken to me in that 4 weeks.
Well, was it like this? So when I left one of my jobs, I said, and I had to give a month's notice. So it was one of my European jobs. And I said, I have to, you know, I'm leaving and I've got another job and thanks very much. And my boss said, are you going to Chanel? And I said, no. I was like, well, I don't even know why that would randomly pop in your head. I was like, no. Okay, fine. Left the room. And from that good day onwards, for my 4 weeks, tell the girl in the corner I want this, but done like this. Tell the girl in the corner I want this over here. Tell the girl in the corner I want X for lunch. Tell the girl in the corner, literally, tell the girl in the corner this is a terrible job. Tell the girl in the corner, never spoke to me again. And it was so embarrassing for me, but for everybody. I dreaded that entire month. I think I probably cried every morning. It was disastrous. It was ridiculous. Anyway.
I mean, no, like I didn't get addressed third hand or, you know, at all. But I also I wasn't upset about it. I was in a white hot rage for the entire 4 weeks.
You're better than I was.
Yes.
Okay, so you went from Stellar to...
I went from seller to being an influencer. This is what I was talking about.
To being in it. But I thought you're now, you say, a recovered influencer.
Now I would still consider myself recovering.
Oh, recovering.
Because I want to leave the door open that if somebody offered me 10 grand, I'd probably still take it to do something. Do you know what I mean?
I appreciate that. Honesty. Is that recovering or is that just like an unconvinced influencer?
Or is that just like an unsuccessful influencer?
Oh, yeah.
No, you know what? Like, okay, so there were kind of a few back and forths where I was an influencer for maybe 2 years and then I was like, oh my God, this is really difficult. Like every bit of criticism I got from my work, I took super personally. I like began to really struggle with kind of having no delineation between myself and my work, if that makes sense. Cause
I think it was really hard because it wasn't just that you took the work criticism, but like people feel very free, as we all do. And I think there is a recognition or like a realization happening now that people out there are also real people. Whereas at the beginning of influencing, it was like, oh, you put yourself out there, you deserve this.
Yeah.
At the beginning of influencing, there was a recognition. There was a sort of an assumption that, oh, you put yourself out there, like you deserve whatever I say about you.
Like, yeah, you want to be a celebrity. Like, I am your personal Now magazine. I'm going to write a horrible headline about you.
Exactly.
But I think for me, it was as well, when everything you write about and everything you post about is about you.
Yeah.
Every time someone doesn't like your work,
yeah, it's personal.
they don't like you.
Well, I do remember,
I mean?
like, when you came over, it used to drive me insane. But it wasn't enjoyable for you. Like, it
No.
was, you weren't happy. Like, you were over here and you were stuck to your phone. And not in a, like, oh, now I feel like when you're on Instagram, you're enjoying it. You're looking at, you're like, oh, that's funny. Oh, this picture of me is terrible. Everybody's enjoying it. It's funny. I look ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, it's more lighthearted. Whereas there, it was more serious. And I think you were very stressed by it, you know, and you were always glued to your phone, whereas now the phone actually goes down. We can do a jigsaw and the phone goes down.
You know what? It's so annoying to me now when I think about it, because I'm like all of those things are true, but I wasn't even that successful. Like the way you're talking about it now, you'd swear I had like 250,000 followers and was, you know, but like, you know, by that same token, there was a point at which I was kind of sharing so much and posting so much. I think one day I counted it and I got something like 420 messages, like on average over the course of 1 week each day.
Yeah.
And I replied to every single one. Like, so that's a huge amount of, you know what I mean? Huge amount of work and a huge amount of like emotional,
Huge amount of mental
emotional
space.
labor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So then there was kind of a couple of months where I was like, oh my God, I want to get off the internet. I was starting to feel like I just wasn't well, basically. I was really overwhelmed by everything. I was starting to get really paranoid. I didn't really want to leave my house because I felt like every time I went anywhere, I would not see, but people would see me. Like, I would not see people, but they would see me who followed me online and hated me. You know what I mean? That I felt like there'd be people looking at me.
And just to
everywhere.
ask, did the balloons happen in the middle of all of this?
The balloons happened in the middle of all this.
Oh, poor you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're looking, you're not even, she's like, I'm not even enjoying this anymore. It's a terrible conversation.
No. Well, just because like that part was really hard. And like when I look back now, it was really difficult and it was really sad. And it was really...
Too much.
Yeah, it was just really bleak. Yeah.
Yeah, but now you're out of it. Now you're out of it, a la Charles Dickens, and you're out of it, and you're on the other side, and you're living your best life.
Now I'm on the other side.
In Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Well, the other side kind of happened because I basically decided I wanted to get offline, trained to become a personal trainer.
Oh, forgot
which
about
totally
that.
Forgetting.
I forgot about that.
Totally forgetting.
Yeah.
Became a personal trainer, worked at that for about 6 months, realised, oh my God, nobody makes any money. You have to get up at 5 a.m. every day to train people. You have to listen to people like some of whom you don't want to listen to all day.
Stop.
And there's also so much counting, like 5 more, 4 more, no, 3 more, good, just 2 more.
Oh my
Last
God.
one, oh, brilliant. It's so boring. Like you really have to be, but like you really have to be passionate about it to be a good personal trainer.
Yes, I'm definitely getting the impression you weren't.
Well, I love chatting to people, right? So I'm passionate about chatting to people. I'm passionate about lifting weights, and like I was really like I used to love showing people how to lift weights and watching people get better and get stronger. You know what I mean? And be like, oh my God, like imagine 2 weeks ago you would never have thought that you could do what you're doing today, and it's only 2 weeks later. Like I really, really enjoyed those moments, and then I hated everything in between.
But it's like our father said. Our own dad told me not to do fashion design. Recommended I didn't. Now, never stopped me from doing what I wanted to do, but like was like, you really shouldn't do this. And I said, why not? He's like, because you're going to make your hobby your job, and then you're never going to want to do it again. Like, and then you won't enjoy it anymore. It won't be your hobby. It'll just be your job. And I mean, I don't think he's wrong. Like I actually really like my job, and but I mean, I don't spend a lot of time drawing or being creative outside of my job.
For fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't actually spend a lot of time drawing and being creative in my job. I spend a lot of time working with people who are drawing and being creative. I'm more managing and directing them. So I do see the point of like, I don't do a lot of that anymore. And I think that was you mixed up the same thing, right? You enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So you thought you'd enjoy it as your job. But in fact, then it also became probably a chore to go and do your own workout. You're like, oh, for God's sake, now I've got to go back and do my own workout on top of this. So Rosemary, so you did your personal training in the middle of all of this. So that was, I mean, at least a good skill learned, right? And,
Yeah.
And now
and
you're
like
in
I feel very smug now when I work out and I look at people doing it wrong.
Oh,
love that.
Good,
love
good.
That.
I love that. I think
Big plus.
I think that you should probably question your use of the word smug, how often you use it, and what that says about you. But another topic. So now you are in Fort Wayne, writing.
Now, yes, yeah.
Writing a book. What's the plan?
Oh yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, that. Yeah, so I basically kind of transitioned really slowly from. I set up a Patreon for my podcast, and then I started writing more and more for my Patreon and posting more and more of my writing on Patreon. And kind of at the same time that I'd started to feel really paranoid, there was a real comfort in putting all these things behind a paywall and being like, okay, like random people who hate me can't read this anymore, or if they can, they have to pay for it.
Yeah.
And like
that makes sense.
Yeah, and it also just kind of made me feel a bit safer that I was like, okay, probably they're not going to pay for it if they hate me. So the people who pay for it and read my stuff are going to be people who want to support me and who are interested in what I have to say, which was a really nice position to be in. So I started writing more and more for Patreon. So that's pretty much what I do now, semi full time. I do some kind of social media consulting. I do a little bit of commercial, like blog writing, a little bit of commercial journalism, freelance.
You answer my questions about how many people have listened to our podcast.
Oh my God, I am your podcast PA 24/7. I'm doing this podcast. I'm doing my other podcast, How to Be Sound, which I've just started getting back on a kind of a bi-weekly schedule.
Oh, but I have to say, not to congratulate me, but you're lucky you have me because I'm definitely keeping you regular. As they say, I'm your personal Activia. I'm your personal Activia yogurt.
You're just like the prunes.
I am your personal
prune. You're not paying me $3,000 to talk about you.
I'm your personal free prune.
Yeah. But like, you know what? Like I've always wanted to make a living by writing. And I thought that would look very different to how it looks now.
Yeah.
But I'm also much happier now than I ever was when I was kind of close to what I imagined I wanted. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, it's hard to know, right? It's hard to imagine, like, until you're in it, what life's all about. Do you know what I mean? I don't mean that.
Yeah.
I don't mean that to sound profound, and it doesn't. So I'm good, but.
Yeah, I'm like, you're grand. That was not that profound.
But I mean,
that's just like when that doctor was like, "Listen, if you want to become a model, you're like, don't worry."
How dare you? Did we talk about that?
Yes, we did.
Oh, we did. Where the doctor told me that, like, when I went in, when Mom brought me in because I was super fat, and the doctor said, well, not only is she super fat and needs to eat less, but like if she ever wants to be a model, we should break her face right now. Like, what the hell? Seriously, the more I think about it, I'm like, no wonder I'm drinking a lot of wine. No wonder I'm relatively damaged. I'm not that damaged, but like thanks to wine and pizza. So, on that note,
here we are
in Fort Wayne, both of us. We've both done our careers backwards. Started in Kildare, which is the equivalent of Paris.
God.
Ended up in Fort Wayne, which is the equivalent of the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Well, like, I was thinking more started in the Irish Times in like the paper of record.
Yeah, it's
ended
true.
up basically like writing my diary on the internet.
In Fort Wayne.
In Fort Wayne, India. But I'm delighted with myself.
I know you are. And I'm delighted that you're here.
I have a great
I'm
time.
delighted that you're here. It's the first time in 20 years that I've ever lived close to a family member who I now cannot hang out with because of coronavirus. But I'm still delighted
it's okay.
that
You
you're
can
here.
call me 6 times a day.
That's
and
true.
It's not ridiculously expensive, and you can ask me about your podcast ratings.
Our podcast ratings, and we're in the same time zone. That's true. That's amazing. And I went over to you today and social distanced with my grog mask, gorg mask, my Fraggle Rock mask. Yes,
you did. It was an absolute delight.
Aww.
Beatrice, as usual, this has been the best. Hour and a half of my day.
Oh, except for the other hour and a half earlier on where I brought you over flowers. That was a nice hour and a half too.
That was pretty nice, yeah.
Right? And then I noticed, and I brought you your IKEA cushions and a caramel frap. And I noticed when I got home that not only had you had left me my cushions, which was very nice, you'd also left all the wrapping from the inside of the box in the back of my car, which I have to tell you, I did not super appreciate.
Listen, there's loads more wrapping here. Don't worry about it.
I was like, the cheek of her.
Do you not still have that skip?
No, the skip's long gone.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
absolute brat. I know. All right. I'm Beatrice.
I'm Rosemary, and this has been
Not Without Your
My
Sister.
Sister.
Oh, your sister. My sister?
Not Without My Sister. Jesus Christ. The professionalism. Thank you all for listening. If you have time and are that way inclined, we'd really appreciate if you would rate and review us on Apple Podcasts if you have an Apple device. An iPad.
You can tell that I particularly would really appreciate it. I am very, very keen on these ratings and reviews. Thank you.
She loves a good review.
Thank you for listening.
She loves to have a review sent to her in the afternoon.
I do.
Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you next week with another episode of Not Without My Sister. Not Without My Sister is produced by Liam Garrity. Sound editing and original music by Don Kirkland, and our original illustration is by Lindsay Nielsen.
Not Without My Sister is a member of The Warren, the home of great Irish podcasts. As is my podcast, Meet Your Maker. You'll find more great shows at thewarren.ie.